Welcome back, YouTube. So, in this video, I want to cover the numbers we would need to hit in order to kind of have like a red May. Based off of the last few videos I've made, people have been asking, okay, well, what numbers do we need to hit if we're looking to have that downward consolidation? We understand that this happens typically in crypto. We understand that we have some geopolitical events going on. We understand the macros. We understand that the cycle has historically been 18 months. But what are the numbers that can kind of give us an idea if we're going to have that break to the downside? So we're going to talk about it in this video. So what we're looking at here is if we have that break to the downside as far as a market, not in particular just Dogecoin, but we're going to get to Doge in a moment. Obviously, you'd look to Bitcoin to kind of get those numbers. So the biggest thing you're going to look for is a break below this a major support level that we have here at around $59,000, right? Because if this happens, we're looking at this gap fill here. This is a major momentum here. Not really. Now, we can pump the brakes in there. Obviously, if a whale comes in, this has happened a few times on this cycle. But just looking at typical chart data, typically gaps fill, right? So if this happens, then we'd be looking at around a $52,000 Bitcoin. Now, from the height of here, we're talking around a $20,000 sell off. So we're talking about astronomical numbers as far as for the Bitcoin overall price, as far as for the overall liquidity leaving out of Bitcoin from that $20,000 per coin, right? So obviously this will have a ripple effect across the market. So what we'd be looking at is a consolidation here, because obviously if we look at the typical sell-offs that we've seen here, the average that I took to get this number before I move on to my next point would be around that 59,000 mark. But we've seen sell-offs after the halving, before Bitcoin reaches its peak, before we get to peak bull run. We've seen another 50-60% sell-off before. That's happened before. That would be like the equivalent of Bitcoin going to 40,000 before 40,000 before it runs and goes to before we go into peak bull run. So that is not abnormal, but I'm not going to say it's unlikely because we have some things developing, but we're far off from that, at least for now. Obviously, we'll keep you guys updated, but as of right now, we've gotten strong rejections here off of this 58 mark. So we're not even threatening to do that. This is just a hypothetical video here, just to kind of give you an idea if you're charting out where or what you're going to do and during this bull run here, and kind of some peak numbers. Like if this happened, would I accumulate more? Would I take profit here? Just going to give you a general idea. So pretty much our next stop would be at around 52. Around 51,000. So we're talking about 20,000 sell off. So how that correlate? We talked about the ripple effects across the market. So for Doge, we'll see what does that gap fill look like for Doge, right? And remember, historically, this has never happened before. We had this major run here. So we got the strong rejections here. You can consider this maybe like our 58 mark, around this 12 cent. So if we break the 15 cent, right? And so what would be like our 58 mark for like the equivalent of Doge? And that would be at around 12 cent, right? So our next line of defense would be, I can even put that here, will be somewhere around here, right? Somewhere around that 12 cent mark. This would be the equivalent of our 58,000 in Bitcoin. If that breaks if we break below that 12 cent like that, then again, we're not even close to that happening so far. We've either had engulfing candles or really strong wicks to bounce off of this area, and we typically don't close down here. But in the event that happens, then we're looking at the gap fill, and that will take us to around like 9 cent, right? That would be what would be considered a major sell-off to the extreme. Now, the unique thing is that's an extreme point of a sell-off prior to getting into peak bull run. If I'm not mistaken, that's only happened once, right? So typically we'll see those kinds of sell-offs in the run here. So typically that's not something that happens really. We're typically somewhere above around like that 58 mark for Bitcoin, like percentage wise. So that would put us at around that 12-cent mark for Doge. That's normally what's happening. And then we're bouncing off of those areas and or trending sideways until we go into peak bull run. So that is just like the extreme case here of the rarity of if we were to have that sell-off here. But that'll be very interesting, because what would happen is for us to get an extreme sell-off, that'll be very interesting considering the fact that we had an extreme bullishness early on in the market. So that will be this would certainly be a historic bull run on both sides of the spectrum, because again, that's only happened once, if I'm correct. And we've broken records and have had a divergence as far as for the aggressiveness of this run, and having that opportunity to for Bitcoin to set prior to the halving, for the altcoins to run alongside Bitcoin prior to the halving. So this is certainly an opportunity here to have we already had an historic event, not even an opportunity, but we've already had that historic event as far as for the aggressiveness of the overall run. But to have that on the other side would certainly be interesting. Now, obviously, we looked at those numbers. That it will certainly have to be some major events or liquidity pulls for that to actually happen. And we'll have tails as far as for whether or not that happened. Whether if we look at swaps, if we look at long versus shorts, whether or not the candles began to weaken as far as for volume going down by 30% or more. These are all indicators saying that, okay, well, the trend is getting weak and we're probably going to have to go lower to get some liquidity. But as of right now, none of those are the case, right? I just wanted to put this video out there for those of you who had questions about what about the downside? Because as I take pride in this channel, I don't typically like to just say, oh, this is a just look at the positive, or just say, oh, this is just a pump video or a bullish video. There's two sides to the coin. I like to cover both. So this is certainly covering the other side, because just like people make money on the positive side of coins, people make money on the negative side of coins. You can certainly do both. And I think it's very important to cover those. So if you're looking at the shorts here, I want to just cover shorts, because I didn't really cover the short chart video earlier today. The biggest thing that you're going to see is that we are above the 200-day for the first time this year, right? So, and it's not necessarily big movements, but this is kind of incremental, just because they were getting wrecked consistently prior to this run here. So even well, I mean the first time, which is technically the second time. The first time they certainly got wrecked. That's that this candle here, where they came in and they were trying to pump it up and it got destroyed, and then it got destroyed right here as well. And then they're kind of just getting their confidence back as we transition above it now. This is kind of sentiment as far as for them taking positions, because they believe that's possible, that we can have that further push down. But that's not a major indicator, because if you look at a little deeper in that and look at the longs versus the shorts, you'll see that typically like the longs are running around a 3-to-1 spectrum on the market. So we're certainly keeping an eye on this and see if that starts to match with what we're seeing with short price action. But right now it's not. There's a divergence there. So we're still seeing overall bullishness in the market. So those are the numbers to watch for. Obviously, a break below 58,000 if you're hoping for red, or if you're hoping to acquire it more for Bitcoin. And that will be a break below 12 for Dogecoin in this perspective number. So just kind of do like the 58.12 mark, the equivalent for Bitcoin and for Doge. So as we transition through this market, there will be many of these ups and downs. I'll be here to give you my perspective, and we'll take a look at the charts together, because sometimes when we have macro events happen, sometimes like there are certain points or days where there can be such extreme panic that the charts aren't going to correlate that information. It's kind of like if there was, I don't know, like an attack on we announce a war or attack on a U.S. embassy or something like that. Like, you won't be able to predict that with a chart. But other than that, we'll have the perspective numbers when we see those, just kind of give you an idea, because when things start moving, they move relatively quickly. So let me know your thoughts as far as on these numbers and what you would do in those situations if we did manage to hit those numbers. I would certainly love to hear those in the comment section. If you found value in this video, please consider subscribing. We still have 100,000 followers before Bitcoin hits $100,000. So if you can help with that, I would greatly appreciate it. Thanks, and I'll see you guys in the next video.